This Swedish thing was last century's Tesla Model 3. Tesla is currently worth more than the next 6 most valuable car companies combined. So how is it that a little niche automaker could possibly be worth so much? Well, it's the same reason why Saab was such a big deal back then. It wasn't a car company, so it did everything differently, and many things better. That is a Saab 99. This is a Saab 900, and they're effectively the same car. More on that in a second. But when the 99 debuted in 1967, it was so far ahead of its time that it more accurately predicted the future of the automobile than anything until Tesla came along. And to understand how that could possibly happen, we need to discuss where Saab came from. Saab's first car was the 92, and it appeared in 1947. As an airplane manufacturer, Saab's car was different. The whole body was made from one piece of metal, which got cutouts for the windows. It started out with a 2-stroke 2-cylinder, then got a 2-stroke triple, and then inherited a 4-stroke V4 that was 2/3 of a Ford Cologne V6. You know, the motor in your buddy's old Ford Explorer. The 92, 93, 94, 95, and 96, all effectively the same car, were in production for over 30 years. But Saab never rested on its laurels, making constant improvements. And indeed, about halfway through that 30-year run, Saab introduced its second ever new car, the 99. The 99 was still a very different type of car. Saab, the airplane manufacturer, designed it for crash safety using things like load paths. That's how they would design an airplane's fuselage. So, the 99 has a 1-inch thick reinforcement that goes from the top of the A-pillar in a perfectly straight line right down to the base of the chassis to protect you in a rollover. Saab's engineers were no dummies, but they did enjoy being dropped on their heads. They dropped the 99 from 8 feet in the air, and the car barely noticed. The only thing safer would have been if the car refused to roll over in the first place, like the Tesla Model X did. Because of the different way it was engineered, the 99 had a structure that was like 1/3 stiffer than other cars. And that wasn't just good for crash safety. It also meant there were no squeaks or rattles, and it could be made to handle well. The 99 lineage is also loaded full of industry firsts, like the first ever side impact door beams, first headlight wipers, doors that extend past the sill so your pants don't get dirty after driving in the snow, the world's first seat heaters, and activated carbon cabin filtration. It had a crazy curved windscreen that left more room for your head in a crash, plus gave you great visibility and was good for aerodynamics. It also had a flat under tray for that last reason, and Saab claimed the 99 was tied with the Citroën DS for the lowest drag coefficient. Oh, and by the way, this dorky concave shape back here wasn't done to be dorky. It was done after Saab spent time in the wind tunnel in the 1960s. And what they were looking at was the airflow break over the trailing edge of the roof, and they wanted that breakaway boundary layer to control wake turbulence. So it wasn't done to be dorky, it was done because they were dorks. And dorky people bought Saabs. In 1972, a study of university faculty showed an uncanny correlation between the car they drove and their political leanings. In that year's presidential election, Richard Nixon crucified George McGovern in the second largest landslide in American history. Just 37.5% of the public voted for McGovern. But 98% of Saab driving academics voted for him. The only group of people who were more liberal than Saab drivers were people who had no car at all, which means that driving a Saab was the last step you'd take before burning your bra and saying, "I'm going to ride a bicycle every day to save the environment with my saggy breasts flapping in the breeze." Sounds a lot like today's Tesla drivers, doesn't it? There's another similarity, which happened in 1978 when Saab slapped a turbo on the 99. turning it from a quickish runabout to a genuinely car magazine cover story fast car. Turns out, liberals liked a lot of power then too, and Saab's turbocharging, like today's EVs, showed the clear direction of the future of powertrains.
The 99 wasn't first to turbo. In fact, it was a couple years behind the 930 turbo from Porsche, to say nothing of the experimental sort of limited production turbos that came before that. But this was very different. First, this isn't a purpose-built sports car, it's a family car. And second, Saab's goal with turbocharging wasn't outright performance and ultimate horsepower numbers. Its goal was to keep the efficiency of a relatively small four-cylinder, but adding in the smooth, effortless torque of a much bigger engine.
So, very much unlike the turbocharged sports cars, Saab 99 Turbo cemented the recipe for today's quietly powerful four-cylinder cars. More on that in a minute, because the 99 Turbo only lasted a year before the 900 came out.
Like I said before, the 900 is just an update on the 99. Take a look. In fact, from the driver's seat rearward, they're identical. They use the same glass, the same doors, the same body panels, the same hatch even. There were, however, some changes up front.
To help with new US crash regulations, the wheelbase was stretched by 2 inches and the front extended by 8. That critical rollover load path now formed a Z, but it was still there, as were all of the 99's other quirky features, all put there because someone really thought about it. For example, the emergency brake worked on the front wheels, because with a 60-40 weight distribution, it's the front wheels that'll better help hold the car in place.
Though comically, that was changed to the rear wheels for 1988, which had to cause some accidents. I mean, good thing about the safety cage, right?
The safety stuff continued. Saab required that the car be in reverse gear to get the key out, and then the shifter stayed locked in reverse.
And that meant a couple things. First, it meant you didn't have to use the e-brake in icy conditions where e-brake cables like to freeze up. Number two, it meant your Saab wouldn't roll away down a hill when some mischievous brat leaned in and knocked it into neutral. And three, most importantly, it moved the key away from the area your right knee wants to occupy in the event of an accident.
This whole interior was done by fighter jet designers, so the dash wrapped around you for easier access and peripheral visibility. And the controls were clear, easy to read, and laid out in a way that put the things you use the most often closest to your line of sight. Obvious now, but these were the days when other companies would put a radio down by your feet.
And so the radio was up high, allowing those university professors easier access to educational content.
We bought a Saab. Well, what'd you buy a Swedish piece of shit like that for? It's a safe car.
See? Even George Carlin knew these were safe cars. Speaking of comedy, look at that overhang. And then look at the actual real overhang. It's huge, and it's there for good reason. This is a front-wheel drive car with a longitudinal engine that's located almost entirely in front of the front axle. But then the engine is turned around 180 degrees, so it's backwards. And then it's leaned over at a 45-degree angle, where it then drives the transmission via a chain.
It's leaning over at a 45-degree angle because the 99's original engine was half of a Triumph Stag V8, and V8s are 90 degrees.
This is the front of the engine, so that's where the V-belts are and the alternator, and that is the back of the engine, which means doing a clutch on this engine is actually easier than replacing the V-belt. And my favorite part, the exhaust leaves the side of the head and heads forward right towards the headlight, where it then encounters a turbocharger and then makes a U-turn, skimming by within like a quarter of an inch of the sticker on the battery that says "Do not expose to excess heat" before it finally makes its way towards the back of the car. Who did that?
What you can't see is the Saab's APC system, which was the first to reduce boost in response to knock. Towards the end of its run, the 900 Turbo's compression ratio was 9-to-1. The Porsche 911 Turbos was 6.5. What this meant was that the Saab Turbo wasn't dead off boost.
Its unique wastegate design reacted to exhaust pressure, not intake charge, so the Saab Turbo's torque curve more closely resembled that of a larger NA motor.
And peak boost was only like 8 or 10 psi, so it didn't make huge horsepower numbers. When the APC first came out, it made 135 horsepower compared to the NA version's 110. That tiny little difference meant it wasn't a lot faster at top speed or on the Autobahn, but the turbo torque down low meant that the 900 turbo was really quick around town, at the speeds where we really drive them, like today's EVs. The rest of the driving experience? Well, it was so good that the 99 came out in 1967, but the 900 was still competitive 20 years later. In fact, Saab was able to report sales increases every single month for 60 consecutive months from 1982 to 1987, when the car was 20 years old.
I could spend all day telling you just how wonderful a Saab 900 Turbo drives, or showing you just how ridiculously enormous it is back here. Or I could describe how beautiful my mom's 81 900 Turbo was, bouncing around on the back of that flatbed truck on its monthly trip to the dealership, or even just broken down on the side of the road where it was perpetually.
But my mom loved it. So did everyone.
Including David E. Davis, who, I got to admit, said it far better than I ever could. So let's just defer to him and what he wrote when this car was new.
The Saab 900 Turbo is a Mercedes-Benz that wandered out of the house one night during an acid experience and was never the same again. It exists in an altered state, a marvelous blend of solid citizen, no-nonsense values with a proclivity for the occasional breach of the peace, as though your rich uncle, assistant state chairman of the Republican Party and pillar of the Lutheran Church, might sometimes dress up as Joan Crawford to run in marathons. The Turbo is a safe, practical car that you and mom and the kids can use to escape from the cops.
Oh, he was definitely wearing tweed when he wrote that. From the sounds of it, he was drunk. But everything that David E. wrote in 1982 about the Saab Turbo applies to today's Tesla Model 3. Safety, efficiency, speed, and out-of-the-box thinking, that is what a Swedish crystal ball looked like. Can I go drive it now? Okay, so you're just gonna keep the Ferrari framed out the entire time, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Action.
I'm not some rich YouTuber asking you to like and subscribe. Hey, up, keep the Ferrari out. I'm an automotive journalist asking you to like and subscribe. And that's because that's how YouTube works. If you don't click those buttons, YouTube doesn't know you liked what you've just seen and isn't gonna show you any more of it. And if you don't like what you've just seen, well, join the club. And by that, I mean the Haggerty Drivers Club, which gets you access to this award-winning magazine, as well as discounts on amazing stuff. And if you still don't like what you've seen, well, then just leave a nasty comment, because that's how the internet works. I need to go clean that up.